I just recently had the honor of completing a set of beautiful dolls inspired by two of my favorite books, both written by Frances Hodgson Burnett, The Secret Garden and The Little Princess. Both dolls were commissioned by one of my doll collectors, who upon falling in love with Miss Mary Shelley and confiding in me her love for literature, we were set upon the journey of bringing these two special characters to life. In my opinion, both stories have a through line, transformation and hope through imagination, and what most apt thing to do than to bring them to life by someone who adores storytelling with dolls and these books. This was the first doll I created back in the summer of 2025. The first time I read the book, illustrated by Inga Moore, was back in 2013. I had just started homeschooling my young daughters, and spring was barely in the horizon. We headed to the local library and acquired the heaviest load of literary bounty to read together while still sipping hot chocolate, eating toast lathered with grandma's raspberry jam, and nestled on the couch under blankets. We were easing into our homeschooling journey by way of reading as many books as we could. I discovered back then a plethora of English authors by reading to my daughters, and this book in particular opened such a magical world of gardens and animal husbandry. We longed for the idea of owning our own garden one day, as we only had a mere square of grass in the backyard in our then city dwelling, not knowing that indeed very soon we would be rewarded by the universe with about a whole acre to play with. We loved the book so much we read it 3 more times. It became a nice spring tradition to read how a garden in Yorkshire makes up under the care of a timid, naive, but stubborn child gardener, how her health and interest for life awaken the same as the roses and the crocuses. Since I don't own a copy of the book, I listened to it while I was working on Mary Wren. I've also linked the free ebook in the video description. If you want to check out different illustrated versions, this video does a pretty good job of showing her collection, and amazingly, it starts with the very first book we read, the one illustrated by Inga Moore. Mary Wren is a custom doll. Both her mom and I love the 1993 movie version with Kate Maberly as Mary Lennox and Maggie Smith as Mrs. Medlock, since that's the one my daughters and I also watch many times. As you can see, I tried to state as true as Mary's description as possible, hoping that as she fattens up by eating lots of delicious porridge and gets her legs strong by using her jumping rope, she's comfortable in her clothes. There's something very tender and sweet about my Mary, who, by the way, wanted a middle name, and so we chose Wren for her. But first, the unmentionable. Every now and then, I feel called to share the undergarments of the dolls, seeing as they either post clever achievements in the sewing department, or just because the dolls look quite adorable in their undies. These long bloomer-style underpants are made with one of my yummiest cottons, a vintage piece I received as a gift a long time ago. This particular set is made with French seams for even more a vintage feel. I remember when I was scared of doing curved French seams, and I don't know what happened to me in Portugal, but now I make them like nobody's business. I am presenting Mary to you in this outfit, a beautiful and ever so soft cotton double gauze dress with light blue florals and eyelets. This dress has long sleeves with nice cuffs, a Peter Pan white line collar, and a wide long skirt. Under it she wears her vintage cotton bloomers, her nice gray socks, and her wool boots. Over it, she wears a linen overdress with a wide lace ruffle. To complete this outfit, she has a slouchy wool bonnet with a little bit of blue ribbon, cinching it so it stays put. This photo was the inspiration behind Mary Wren's dress. I think you could say I came pretty darn close to making the same dress. I used cotton seersucker for mine to give it a more summery feel. I also used linen throughout just because I love using it as a contrast fabric so much. That sailor color was so much fun to make, and I made her belt with the same fabrics for a matchy feel. A tip I can give you for that crisp look. The belt is made with medium weight interfacing. The sleeve cuffs have fusible interfacing, and the collar is made with interlining, so the fabric drapes better than if you were to use interfacing. One of the requests of her mother was hair that can hold a curl. I used long camel wefts for her hair to evoke the wild Yorkshire moors and many beautiful Portuguese natural fabrics to dress her in the blue tones that her mom requested. And embroidered. I think it's so cool, and it's just the fabric for a doll I'm making. What do you think? Isn't it beautiful? Lovely. Her expression is both thoughtful and mischievous, ready to discover whatever secrets lay in that garden. Since Sara was going to sit right next to Mary Wren, we decided their wardrobes had to be somewhat interchangeable, assuming, of course, the familial ties and the girly proximity. We began by selecting something light and airy in soft colors to signal the springs and summers where Sara reigned as the most valuable pupil at her school. Seeing that her father wanted her well looked after, she had her private room, her own servant, and of course, the special doll he bought her before leaving, Emily. I chose for Sara only some of my favorite fabrics and laces. It really took us a long time to decide which ones to use. One of the reasons why it takes me so bloody long to make custom dolls. They seem to be more persnickety when it comes to their clothing. One of the things I love about making dolls, and Sara in particular, is noticing how the dolls come different, come alive, even from the same pattern. The pattern I used to make Sara and Mary, I call figlette, a doll I have been making since 2011 when I made the very first one, Eva. Even though I've already published an earlier and simpler version of this pattern for your own making hands, the one I create continues to evolve so very much. But the feeling of luxurious amounts of wool, of having a doll so large that sits on your lap and gives you the best hugs, it's still all there. I guess that's one of the many reasons my beloved doll collectors continue to request the style and size of doll. They really gravitate to the feeling of the doll, to her soft-spoken personality, her kindness and firmness of body, being large enough to give you a hug when you're feeling down. While Sara and I were revisiting my past and choosing fabrics and whatnots, she sat in the studio wearing an antique child's dress I was given a few years back by a very kind friend of Fig and me on Facebook. Having her sit in that dress actually inspired the overall feel I wanted for her clothes. So we went for puffy sleeves, tight cuffs, embroidered laces and light fabrics, at least for long underwear, which we decided to make into one suit instead of two separate pieces. And what about Emily, you ask? Glad to tell. Initially, I wasn't commissioned to make her as well, but as I worked more and more on Sara, I felt like she truly needed Emily in her life, as she plays such an important part in her story, especially at the beginning. So off we went to alter one of my patterns, the mini fig, and give her chubbier proportions to represent a younger child. I wanted her to feel more like a doll than a sister, so I used linen for her torso and beads for her eyes, a first one for me. I gave her the traditional short dark brown hair, but using curled mohair wefts and a full wardrobe worthy of a princess. Her face has that gentle, imaginative gaze, the kind that sees the magic even in a dusty attic. Both dolls use the same natural fiber art doll techniques I've developed, but the color palettes tell different stories. Blue in stripes and florals for the theme of renewal in the Secret Garden versus a more deeper, dramatic tones with a hopeful yellow and light green accents for Sara. So now I'm very happy to have sent both dolls home and to have inspired their mother, having these two dolls as her companions, to keep her company as she goes through a new experience in her life. And I am wondering now, which literary character should I make next as a doll? Comment below, should I do another Anne of Green Gables or a little girl or boy from Narnia? Thank you so much for joining me on this creative journey. Subscribe and hit the bell for more doll making magic.